So I'm sitting here with Naomi Teeter. I found her through the website Mind Body Green. She's a contributor and reached out to her to see if she'd be willing to sit down for an interview. So first off, Naomi, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me. Would you mind just introducing yourself, maybe a little bit of what you do as a health and wellness coach, and maybe talk about what your typical client looks like?
Sure. Well, first, Jason, I really want to thank you for doing this podcast, for doing the documentary. This is something that I feel like everybody that wants to lose weight really, really needs. So, first, thank you for doing that. As you said, my name is Naomi Teeter. I am a certified nutritionist and health coach here out in Spokane, Washington, with my husband and my two chihuahuas. As far as what I do for a living, like I said, I'm a certified nutritionist and health coach for my business, Inspire Transformation. I pretty much work with women that were kind of like on the same journey to losing weight that I was. Most of them have been overweight most of their lives. Most of them have limiting beliefs about what's possible in their lives. Um, yeah, so that's what I do.
Great. Hey, pup, what's the dog's name, by the way?
Lola.
For those who are listening on iTunes, they won't be able to see that her dog just jumped up and is quite adorable. Um, so, kind of to get a little bit into your backstory, I think you mentioned to me before that most of your family was morbidly obese, and I was just curious if you could talk about that and maybe how did that set the expectations, even from an early age, of your own body?
I can only think of maybe two or three distant cousins that were average sized, if that gives you any sort of indication of the level of my family being overweight, obese, morbidly obese. So it was pretty much just normal to me. I remember being like 140 pounds in the fourth grade. My little brother, who I shouldn't say little brother, I should say younger brother, he got up to about 840 pounds a few years back. So, yeah, 840. And he had an accident and he was forced to lose 300 pounds. So, it was something this like, I wouldn't say running joke, but it was like this idea that we were all big boned. And I believed that because I wasn't educated. I didn't know that you couldn't really be big boned. When I lost 150 pounds, I realized, oh goodness, I actually have normal sized bones, not big boned. So, you know, it was something that was accepted, even though I didn't want to be fat. I prayed at night as a child, as a teenager, hoping that, for a miracle. But that never happened. So that's kind of, what was, expected of me and, just our body size and that it was supposedly normal in my family.
You mentioned, I think, somewhere that you were picked on a bit at school for your weight and also for your home situation. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like and how you processed that as a kid?
Yeah, obviously, like I said, I was fat. um, I was also very, very poor, and my dad was an alcoholic. And so we moved around quite a bit. It was hard to make friends. It was hard to really have any sort of connection, real connection with people. I was always an introvert, always shy from even before I was chubby. And I think that's just my nature overall. I am an introvert, but I believe that part of that was because of my size, because people didn't like me because of my size. I got picked on a lot. I remember in second grade being called Miss Piggy. In middle school, I made the mistake of one day of wearing a yellow shirt and got called a school bus. It got really bad, specifically when adults would do it to a child. And I hope I don't start crying when I bring this up, but um, my last name used to be Bodie, my maiden name, and there was a mistake one year in the school book, yearbook, that they called me Naomi Body Buddy, and I had a shop teacher that called me Naomi Booty. So, there was very much an emphasis on my body, and it didn't help that I was already fat. So, that was, it was, like I said, it was hard to make friends just because I was moving around so much. But then on top of that, being fat and being poor and not being able to afford, certain things. So, yeah, it definitely didn't help my self-worth any.
Yeah, and so you live in Spokane, Washington now, but I think I saw somewhere that you were in Oklahoma before. Is that correct?
I would say I lived in Oklahoma off and on. I spent the majority of my life in Indiana. Actually, I've spent more years up here in Spokane now. I've spent the last 8 years here. But yeah, we moved around a lot. I moved to Oklahoma the last time after I got divorced at the age of 20 or 21, whatever it was. And I moved in with my parents for a little while, tried to start my life over again. Oklahoma just nothing out there that I really liked. The scenery wasn't to die for or anything. There was not a big emphasis on health at all. It was very much not a very good environment for me with already being fat and then being around my family that happened to be pretty negative and unsupportive. There was a lot of verbal abuse going on, a lot of, sabotage when you try to do something. You were just kind of like, patted on the head. Okay, you give it a shot for a little while and we'll see how it goes. Meanwhile, we're going to invite you out to buffets and everything to try to sabotage your diet. But yeah, I lived in Oklahoma before I moved here. I moved here when I was 25. So yeah, 8 years ago.
Okay. And I think I saw somewhere if you and if you're okay with chatting about it, but you mentioned that that first relationship you got into, you were really young and how body image and kind of where you were mentally and emotionally kind of factored into getting into that relationship. Can you talk about that a little bit?
My first real relationship was with a guy that showed me attention. I mean, being, let's just say, about 300 pounds. I wasn't probably at the time, was probably closer to 250 or whatever, but being bigger size, people kind of don't, the opposite sex really doesn't pay as much attention to you unless of course they're making fun of you or disgusted with you. But for me, I latched onto anybody that would show me attention. So my first relationship, I got married at 20, divorced by about 21 or 22. Um, it was, not a very good relationship. Didn't have anything in common with him really, and I don't know. It's something you learn from. I definitely gained a lot of weight during that relationship also because you kind of let yourself go. Also, you're no longer seeking out a partner or anything, so you don't really give a crap what you look like. So yeah.
Yeah, and it sounded like whenever you, after all of that, and you decided to move to Spokane, that it kind of gave you an opportunity for a fresh start. Can you talk about what that looked like whenever you first moved, or maybe reasons for moving there?
Yeah, absolutely. As I've told you before, this is probably one of the, I mean, other than losing weight, this is one of the best choices I've made in my life is moving up here to Spokane. And I did that because, and I tell everybody this, I tell them this is the first step I took on my weight loss journey was moving up here to Spokane. I did it one day. I decided to do it one day when I was watching an episode of Oprah. Who happens to be somebody that I really, really admire. And she had the cast of The Secret on, and it's back in the day when everybody was talking about The Secret. And it wasn't necessarily that I was, I guess, attracted to the law of attraction that they were talking about, but it was more the story of adversity, people coming through a lot of tragic setbacks, much like I had, and seeing that they could do it also. So, seeing that it was, not something reserved for just the privileged people. So I was like, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. So that kind of gave me the motivation to start working a little bit harder in my minimum wage jobs. I had two of them to save up money so that I can move up here. Didn't know anybody up here, wanted to start my life over again. And it was scary And when I tell that story to people, they're like, wow, Naomi, you were so brave to do that. You didn't know anybody. You didn't have a job. You barely had a place lined up to live. But I think that was really the catalyst for me starting my weight loss journey, is knowing that if I can do that, move up here with a car that didn't work so well and just basically the clothes on my back, then I could lose weight.
That's awesome. Did you have a specific point at which you decided to make a change with the weight specifically, or was that kind of just really closely tied in with the move? So was that all happening simultaneously for you?
It was about a year after I moved up here to Spokane that I really started to take my health more seriously. So, there was the Oprah epiphany, and then it kind of was a gradual process after that of meeting new people, um, being in this environment that was healthier. I know that Jim Rohn says that you are the average of the five people that you surround yourself with, and that was very much the case for me. Being surrounded by people that were actually working on bettering their health or living a healthy lifestyle was kind of what sparked the interest in me. I had I worked at Macy's at the time, and one of the sales associates that I worked near had just got himself a gym membership, and he had talked about how he lost a little bit of weight, and that inspired me because, quite frankly, at the time I really thought that he didn't have very good, work ethic. I didn't really have a high opinion of him, but I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So went and got the gym membership at the same place that he got his at. So, it wasn't a rock bottom moment. It was mostly just the gradual process of surrounding myself with the right people.
That's awesome. I feel like I saw somewhere that you said you made a list of reasons for losing weight and would look back at that list constantly if you were sound like if you were tempted to eat something or get off track. Can you talk a little bit about that? Whether it actually about the list or just the importance of the list to you?
Because I didn't have a rock bottom moment, because I wasn't trying to lose weight for a special occasion like a lot of people do, I had to find other motivation. So I kept a running list of all of the reasons why I wanted to lose weight and get healthier. And I kept that list on my iPod Touch at the time. And I kept that iPod Touch with me all the time, 24/7. So anytime that I started to feel really good about myself and wanted to backslide into my old behaviors, which was, going out to eat and not working out, I would have to pull up that list and remind myself, these are the reasons why you're still doing this. And, the reasons why ranged in variety depending on what I needed to hear on any particular day at any particular time. Sometimes it was like, well, you want to look cute in smaller clothes. Or it was something really embarrassing that I, definitely don't want to say on the podcast. And it was usually those really emotional, personal, embarrassing things that motivated me to keep going, to like put the cookie down or to go to the gym in the morning, even though I was a little tired. Um, that I would have to say is one of the number one reasons I stuck to it, was having that list of reasons why I was doing it.
That's amazing that you had the ability to realize the importance of that and to reference back and to not just have it be something that that exists in a fairy tale land, but that actually had real everyday application, and that like if you wanted to get there, that you had to keep the goal in mind. Um, I think you mentioned when you first walked into the gym in Spokane, you weighed 300 pounds, and how that was intimidating. I know for myself, the gym that I first started going to is definitely filled with wannabe bodybuilders at times, and lots of meatheads, and or just people who are my age or younger who are super fit. Can you talk about the experience of walking into that gym for the first time, or maybe for the first few months, and what that felt like, and maybe also the difference between reality and perceived reality?
Well, when I started this journey this last time, I was just walking around my neighborhood. But then I realized, okay, I have to bump it up a notch. I have to get that gym membership like the guy at Macy's did. So I kind of persuaded my boyfriend at the time to go in with me and get that gym membership. We signed up together. We were talked into getting personal training sessions, which I really didn't feel like I need, and I really didn't, quite honestly. Um, but having him there initially kind of for me took the focus off of my perceived judgment that was going to, be placed upon me, people staring at me like, what is she doing here? She weighs 300 pounds. And you'll hear people say that, oh, you go into the gym and nobody's really looking at you. They're concentrated on themselves. They're concentrated on their workout. And sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. I've heard a lot of bad stories about that. Thankfully, I haven't had any bad stories, but I knew that that wasn't true because I was looking around at people. And it wasn't that I was judging them, but I was honestly pretty inspired by a lot of people that were sweating their butts off, working really hard. And I remember specifically a guy that was always, always, always on the Stairmaster, and just the sheer amount of sweat that was all over his shirt. Some people are disgusted by that. I was inspired. So I kind of used that to my benefit. I kind of adjusted my mindset a little bit so that I wasn't concentrated on, what will people think of me, in a bad way. I was like, what will people think of me in a good way? If I'm there working out, sweating, doing my best, there's people that are coming into the gym that are just like me, the same size as me, and they need people to see in the gym to show them that it's okay for them to show up and work out, because we all go into, different situations where we're looking for people that look like us. And if we don't find people that look like us, like if we see those meatheads and they don't look like us, we're not going to feel comfortable there. So I put it in my brain that I was there to lead people. I was there to inspire people to show up and, try, because it's really hard to, make yourself uncomfortable and be in that, that space when you are 300 pounds. But if you can switch your mindset like I did, that really helped me a lot.
That's fantastic. I think you say that you lost about 150 pounds in 11 months. Is that right?
Yes.
And what did that look like? Was that gym time, diet changes? Like what all happened in that 11-month period to cause that result?
Quite frankly, in that 11-month period, it was go, go, go. I had a job that was not stressful. I was not going to school at the time. My relationship was just, I don't know, pretty normal. So I thought it was pretty normal, anyways. So it allowed me a lot of time to spend time at the gym and do a lot of meal preparation ahead of time and whatnot. So during that 11 months, I was very dedicated. In fact, I know of very few people that were as dedicated as I was during that time. Um, Physically, I felt really good about going to the gym and eating healthfully. Mentally and emotionally, during that time, I really wasn't thinking too much about anything else other than working out and eating well. I was pretty obsessed with it for quite some time during that time, which led to, my relationship falling apart. Um, but it was very rigid, and I don't suggest it to anybody.
So you get to your goal weight. Obviously, it sounds like a couple things in life are maybe out of whack a little bit. What does it look like once you get there? Because for so many people, the goal is the finish line, and that's the end all be all. Everybody's patting you on the back. You look great, but what did life look like once you had reached your quote unquote goal weight?
Yeah, when I reached the goal weight, I had, obviously, like I just said, my relationship had fallen apart, had a lot of things happening that were stressing me out that did not happen when I was on that journey to lose the 150 pounds. So while I felt physically great, the best I've ever felt in my life, even, from childhood, mentally and emotionally, I just kind of lost it. I was very obsessed about trying to maintain the weight. I had nightmares all of the time about gaining the weight back overnight because I'd never been this size before. So I was still mentally and emotionally the same person that I was when I started the journey because I lost it so fast. I didn't do any of the inner, work. I did all of the physical work. And, I ended up suffering with a little bit of, I should say, a lot of binge eating, sugar addiction, which eventually led to orthorexia, being very rigid about certain ways of eating. I'm not going to name any names of certain diets or anything, but it took a few years, honestly, after I had lost the 150 pounds to kind of get out of being obsessed about food, being obsessed about working out and trying to keep the weight off.
So where would you say you're at now with those kinds of things? Like what have you done to keep that healthy lifestyle, that healthy eating, but yet not to carry some of that same, whether you want to call it baggage or maybe some emotional things that you hadn't dealt with, and that maybe gym or a rigid way of doing things like that had developed. What have you done now since then to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people come into this journey with an all or nothing mindset. And that was something that I recognized within myself over the last few years. And the biggest thing that's really helped me, I guess there's two big things, but one of them is learning about my personality and realizing there's nothing freaking wrong with me. There's nothing that a diet or exercise can change, first of all. And secondly, it's lowering my expectations and standards and not being perfect all of the time or not attempting to be perfect because, sometimes we set out with this idea of how something's supposed to be. Like, let's just say a workout. We think that this workout is supposed to be a certain way. And then you get to the gym and you can't do the workout the way that you want to because the gym's crowded or whatever. And I used to be one of those people that would get really frustrated with that. I mean, really frustrated because I wasn't getting my way. So I had to lower my standards quite a bit and kind of adjust my mindset to say, you know what? Yes, things are not going your way, but how can we make this an adventure? That's something that I've developed over the last few years is asking myself that question, how can I make this an adventure? How can I still use this? How can I make it fun so that I'm not struggling with it, trying to be perfect? What will people think of me? And really coming to terms with, this is my life. It's not just about losing weight or keeping it off or staying healthy. It's about making it enjoyable.
Any goals that you have that you've accomplished, or any physical activities that you've accomplished that you thought would have never been possible had we have had this conversation somewhere in Oklahoma?
Quite honestly, if I would have asked the old me what kind of goals I had for myself, they would not have been all of these things. But, because I took the actions to lose the weight, the physical actions of stretching my comfort zone. I went back to school after being out of school for 12 years. I was a high school dropout. So I went back to school, got my AA degree, and then started working on my bachelor's at a private university. I changed careers. I spent most of my life in retail, working manual labor, pretty much on my feet 24, well, I shouldn't say 24/7. I didn't work 24/7, but working 8 hours a day on my feet all the time, and was offered a position with the CDC as a library tech, and I would have never seen that before. I took up volunteer mentoring of at-risk children. Never would have done that before. Would have been too shy. Would have had too low self-esteem to do that. Um, run a lot of marathons, a lot of half marathons, a lot of just other types of races, climbed a mountain, which was one of the hardest physical things I've ever done in my life, went skydiving on my honeymoon, started my health coaching business. Definitely wouldn't have done that at 300 pounds. And one of the biggest things for me was writing. I moved out here with the intention that I was going to write, and I never did until after I lost all of the weight and finally wrote a book about it. So I finally had something good to write about. So, yeah, those were some of the big things that I've done since I've lost the weight.
Awesome. And as far as your clients go and kind of what that looks like now, do you think you could give any, what are some keys that you tell people for maintaining a healthy lifestyle and weight?
There's no perfect way to do it. Let's just be honest. Every single person I've ever talked to that's maintained a weight loss of more than 3 years has done it a different way than I have. And that's completely fine. Sometimes people get kind of stuck in the best way, the most correct way, the most perfect way to do things, and they get really rigid about it, or they give up because they can't, reach that level, kind of like what I was talking about with my expectations and standards. There's this thing called the National Weight Control Registry. I have paperwork right here for them, and they have done studies over the years on people that maintain a weight loss of more than 1 year. So the requirements is you have to lose 30 pounds only, and you have to maintain it for only 1 year. And then they track you every year of your weight loss, maintaining it to see how you're doing. And they come back with some statistics. And those statistics are often, not accurate, for everybody. It says, for instance, most of these people eat a low-fat diet. Most of these people take part in a lot of rigorous activity. They eat low calorie. And from my own experience with maintaining my weight loss for 7 years, that's not the case. So I always recommend to women and men that want to lose weight and keep it off long term is do what works for you. You have to, it's a lot of trial and error, not necessarily following someone else's plan or even scientific studies.
What would you say to someone who is, I guess this kind of is similar, but what would you say to someone who's first starting on the journey and maybe it just seems, seeing themselves in 5 years just seems impossible? As far as like something today to get them going in the right direction, for them to put in their mind, what would you say to that person?
Well, honestly, I would just tell them to start. We spend so much time researching the most perfect things, like I said before, and that really holds a lot of people back. That kind of paralysis by analysis of studying what other people are doing and never really taking any action for yourself. There's not a perfect way. What, worked for me 7 years ago doesn't work for me now. There's another study out there that says however much you work out, how much physical activity you do to lose weight is how much physical activity you need to do to keep it off. That's not true. That hasn't been true for me. So what I would say to somebody that's, looking for a little bit of hope is that don't go for the quick and easy. You're going to end up right back where you're at, probably even worse than where you started. That was my story for a long time, doing the quick and easy fad stuff, and that didn't work. You have to commit to it. You have to understand that it's a lifestyle change. And the best way that you can do that is to make it fun and enjoyable. You have to kind of stand your own ground and trust yourself enough to know that this is okay for you to do, even if someone's saying, well, I see that you're doing that, but you could be doing this better. You kind of have to shut out those voices and do what works for you and just kind of trust the process, as they say.
Great. And then I guess what advice would you give yourself if you could go back, I think you said 7 years in time and tell yourself at the beginning of the journey, what do you think would have been some words of encouragement or some help in that moment?
Oh, I think about this a lot. In fact, I have a webinar series coming up titled something along the lines of Things I Wish I Knew When I Weighed 300 Pounds. I think the biggest thing I would have told myself is just to try, because I spent years believing that I had to have a rock bottom moment before I could try. I know this sounds really silly, but I think a lot of people probably feel that way. You can change your life at any time. So it's okay to try. And that was another misconception that I had, that if you're trying, then you're weak or you're going to look stupid. And quite frankly, trying is strength. That's where you're going to succeed, is by trying. And it's not just about, losing the weight and appearing better, physically looking better. It's also all of the other little things that come with it. It's the bigger picture of, what you're going to gain from all of this. You're going to gain a different career, perhaps. You're going to gain different relationships. You're going to impact other people's lives. It's kind of like Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. You have a call to action, and you're supposed to answer that call. And when you do, you're going to have people along the way that are going to help you on your mission. You're going to struggle a lot. You're going to want to give up, but you're going to come through it. And the biggest part of that is sharing your journey with other people, to inspire them so that they can go out and do something else too. So that's what I would tell my 300-pound self 7 years ago, is you have to try, because it's not just about you. I'm sorry I'm about to cry, but it's not just about you. It's about other people too.
Well, fantastic words of inspiration. And I guess lastly, how can people find out more about what you're doing? Follow your writing. I know you have a great YouTube channel. Maybe tell us where we can find you and connect.
Oh, yeah, just about everything you can find through theinspiredtransformation.com. And there's links to everything on there, from social media to the blog to the YouTube, whatever. So it's just theinspiredtransformation.com. If that doesn't work for whatever reason, just go to naomiteeter.com.
Fantastic. Well, Naomi, thanks so much for taking the time. Thanks for what you do, for obviously inspiring others, for being brave to share your own story in all these different formats, and for taking the time to share a little bit with us as well.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, talk to you soon.
Bye.